Markup and margin are two of the most misunderstood terms in the industry today, and it's imperative that you know the difference between them. We'll take a look at that difference, how it impacts you, and why you need to pay attention to this. Now, if you price your jobs using a markup, in other words, use a multiplier, cost times 1 point something. In that particular scenario, your profit is shown as a percentage of the cost in that job. If you're using margin, in other words, you use cost divided by a divisor, then at that point, the profit is shown as a percentage of your total sell price. It makes a difference. And you need to understand that difference. Why? Why does it matter? It does matter. It matters because when you look at your profit and loss statement at the end of the week, the end of the month, the end of the year, your profit and loss statement shows gross profit for your company, and it shows that gross profit in dollars. The amount depends on your calculation method. You want to make sure you're using the correct one. Let's look into this a little bit deeper. If we look at a very simplified profit and loss statement, and for this company, we're targeting a 40% gross profit. If I look at this, I can see my total sales were $500,000. My cost of goods sold, in other words, the cost of the equipment and the parts and the labor to install that, came up to $300,000. And so that gives me a gross profit of $200,000. Now, I can't just take all this money and go have some fun. I need to pay my bills. I've got overhead expenses. I've got rent and insurance and all the other overhead expenses that it takes to just simply open your doors every day. That tallies up to a total of $180,000 here. When I subtract that overhead expense from my gross profit, I end up with a net profit of $20,000. Now, it's really simple to find out what my gross profit percentage was for this company. I simply take that gross profit, the $200,000, divided by my total sales, in this case, $500,000. So $200,000 divided by $500,000 comes out to a gross profit of 40%. That's exactly what we were targeting. I can use the same equation on my net profit. I can take net profit divided by my total sales and come up with a net profit percentage of 4%. At least I know where I'm at. Now, here's where the problem comes in. Many contractors don't use a divisor. They don't use margin. Instead, what they use is markup. Markup, remember, is shown as a percentage of the cost. Profit is shown as a percentage of the cost. And so if we looked at this company, what typically tends to happen if we're pricing using markup is, first off, my cost of goods sold stays the same. I still have $300,000. That's what it cost me for my materials and to get that stuff installed. Now, if I'm using markup, the error that most make is that if we're shooting for a 40% profit is that we'll use a cost times 1.4 multiplier. Well, if I do this, $300,000 in cost times 1.4 will result in a total sales of $420,000. When I subtract that out, I found out now my gross profit is not $200,000, but instead it's $120,000. Now again, I can do the math on that. What was that gross profit percentage? 120,000 divided by 420 comes up with a gross profit percentage of 28.5%, not the 40% that we were targeting. A cost times 1.4 multiplier gives me a 40% markup, not a 40% profit. There's a difference. Now, the problem here is we still have to pay all our overhead expenses. So by the time we pay that, we find out that we have not a $20,000 profit, but a $60,000 loss. And again, if we take that divided by our total sales, we find out we have a minus 14% loss in this company. Why does that happen? Again, it matters. It matters because both markup and margin calculations will provide gross profit dollars. The question is, will they provide you enough gross profit dollars to cover all of your expenses, pay yourself, and generate a reasonable profit at the end of the day? Let's dig into each of these calculation methods a little bit deeper. First, markup. Markup, you remember, we used cost times 1.4 and we ended up losing money. Let's just dig into that a little bit more. Remember, in markup, the profit is shown as a percentage of the cost. So if I have a job that my total costs are $1,000, and in these examples, we're going to use a 10% net profit to keep the numbers simple. If I'm shooting for a 10% net profit, I would take a multiplier of cost times 1.1. All right, so again, 10% of $1,000 is $100, or cost times 1.1 gives me a sale price of $1,100. Now, we can very simply, again, calculate what that profit is. The actual calculation to determine our profit is simply your sell price minus your costs divided by the sell. Now, simplify that a little bit, right? If I take my sell minus my cost, that's basically my profit on that job, right? So I take that gross profit divided by the sell, and in this particular example, our profit was $100, right? We sold the job for $1,100. Our costs were $1,000, so that's a profit of $100 divided by a sell price of $1,100. That gives me a gross profit percentage of 9.09%, not the 10% that we thought we were getting. Now you can say, well, Bill, that's less than 1%. What's the big deal? When you spread it over $1 million, $2 million, $3 million, it adds up, especially when that money is coming out of your pocket. That's an issue. So now let's take a look at margin. Remember, margin, we were targeting 40%, and we actually hit our 40% number. Now, margin, in the margin calculations, profit is shown as a percentage of the total sell price, not just the cost. And to calculate this, we use a divisor. The way you figure out this divisor, again, is really simple. We simply take 1 minus your desired profit percentage. So if I'm shooting for a 10% gross profit on this job, I simply take 1 minus 10%, or 0.1 in decimal format, and my divisor is going to be 0.9. If I were looking for a 20% gross profit, then my divisor would be 0.2. If it's a 25% gross profit, 1 minus 25% gives me 0.75 divisor, right? So it's easy enough to come up with that divisor. So again, same job, our formula is now going to be cost divided by that divisor. We were shooting for a 10%, so our divisor is 0.9. Same $1,000 cost divided by 0.9 to give me a true 10% gross profit. My sell price would be $1,111. Just $11 more than the other job, but again, it starts to add up. We can verify this profit. Again, simply take that profit divided by your sell. So in this example, right, our profit was $111 divided by our sell price of $1,111 comes out to a true 10% gross profit. It's important to know that difference. If you're using a markup, you have to use the correct multiplier. And again, a 10%, cost times 1.1 will not give you a 10% profit. It gives you a 10% markup. There's a difference. Again, remember, markup is shown as a percentage of the cost. Margin is shown as a percentage of the total sell price. It's a different reference point between the two calculations. Now, again, you can say, but Bill, it was less than 1%. You're right. At a 10% markup, we ended up with a 9.09% profit. So that was less than a 1% discrepancy. But here's the problem. The greater the markup that you use, the greater the discrepancy starts to be. If I were shooting for a 20% markup, in other words, cost times 1.2, that actually gives me a 17% gross profit. Now we're up to a 3% discrepancy in between what we thought we were going to get and what we're actually getting. If we're using a 30% markup, that's only a 23% profit. Now we have a 7% discrepancy. And at a cost times 1.5, a 50% markup only generates a 33.3% profit. Now we're up to almost a 17% discrepancy. Again, it matters. If you use a multiplier, make sure you're using the right multiplier, because cost times that multiplier, again, is a percentage of the material cost, not the total sale. It's giving a 40%, cost times 1.4, again, is giving you a 40% markup, not a 40% profit. Use the right number. Make sure your profitability is where you intend for it to be.